Hey guys, it's me Felicia, and today we're back for an awaited video which has been requested, which is what I learned in art school, what you learn in art school, the assignments, and everything you need to know. I have prepared this video. I know it took me some time to make it, but I wanted to have it really organized and clear so that it would be more understandable. I know that this video is going to be a lengthy one, so grab yourself a little warm drink or a snack or anything. And before starting, I just want to give a little disclaimer, which is that this is the stuff that I learned in art school. Mind you, I only stayed there for I think 9 months, and for only the first year. So I didn't learn everything that you will learn. I also personally didn't have the best experience with my art school, but that's just me, and a lot of my friends that were at that school continued and had no issues. So keep in mind that this is all about my personal experience and it might be different for other people. I just really hope that this can potentially help some of you, because it's not an easy choice to do whether or not to go to art school. Also, I need to add this one extra information, which is that my school had a kind of weird system where basically we had 2 weeks of school where we had class from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. I believe. So for 2 weeks straight, where we studied one subject. So the subject is usually one of the fundamentals, so like anatomy, perspective, sculpture, etc. And then we had 2 weeks off where we had some free time where we were all home, but we had to do this really big assignment or assignments, which would be kind of like the conclusion of what we learned during class. So these were individual projects that would also be used for our portfolio later on. And alongside that project, we also had a semestrial project that we had to constantly work on outside of school. So there was quite a lot of work to do, in my opinion. So it was pretty stressful, and I personally struggled with doing all this because it was quite a lot of work to do. So you had to really be organized. And second information I have to throw in there is also that my first year at that art school specifically was only working with traditional art. We did no Photoshop, no 3D program, nothing. We only worked on paper and canvas and with clay. Okay, I think I'm finally done with all the little informations I had to give you guys before starting this video. I'm sorry if the intro was a bit long. And let's just hop right in, and let me just show you the work that I've done at my art school. So I decided to have this video a bit more structured in little bits. So the first part is what I learned that helped me and that I enjoyed. So we started things off with perspective, and it's something that I really found helped a lot. Just to tell you, I organized my piles so that on top there's the first exercises that I did, and we'll work our way through to see the last stuff and the final assignments of each subject that we studied. So for the first day, we had to do some simple shapes with this isometric grid. Honestly, it was very boring, and I was scared that we'd be doing that for way too long and I'd get bored. So not much to say about that. And then we did a bunch of scribbles and grids in simple shapes in our sketchbook so that we just get back into the flow of drawing. I've already done a sketchbook tour of this, and I'll have it linked somewhere, but I'll just go back in to show you the main pages that were important in our learning process. After doing that, we moved on to 1-point perspective with simple shapes, to then finally move on to 2-point perspective, where we had to do a design of a house with very simple shapes. So that led to an exercise that I realized was going to be an issue for me because I'm too much of a perfectionist. So I started off with a sketch, which then was translated to this simple thing which made no sense, which led to this drawing, which was very confusing, and I just had the design of the house ready, but I was still very confused about how to place my shadows and do all of that, so I wanted to do it again and work on it some more. But then on this one, I realized that my shadows made kind of no sense, so I scribbled a bunch on it to try and understand and figure things out, because we actually never studied how to do shadows, which is something that I kind of regret. And the final piece is okay in my opinion, but it was just like a lot of work to figure how to make things work. So that was one of the first perspective exercises we did in class. Then we moved on to this castle piece. A lot of these pieces we did in art school are actually like copies of stuff that our teacher would give us that I believe they found online. So like, this is not my design. But what was tedious about this was to understand how to do the spacing of these little things and how to calculate them so that they're nice and correct, because with perspective there's this math thing to do to calculate how much they should be spaced out between each other. So this was actually a 3-point perspective exercise, so you can see that the lines are actually meeting very high up over there on top. I actually did this page first where I drew my perspective points, so one there, and one there, and this was not correct and had some issues, so that's why I redid one on a free paper. But as I was drawing, I realized that there were mistakes, so I did it one last time, which led to this piece that we used markers to color in, and honestly, I am pretty proud with it. Then, I was actually sick at that moment, so I didn't follow the class and was very confused, and this is why it really sucks. But we had to do this bridge that was really high up and complicated to do. So this was just like a rough attempt to doing it. Not my best work. And then we had to draw a place at our house. So I was actually at my grandparents over that weekend and I drew their kitchen. So I did first the sketch over here so that it would be a bit easier. I even did this line to see how I could do the tiles properly with the perspective, and then traced it on top of this so that I would have the final design that would be more clean, and I decided to ink it. My school was not a fan of the fact that I was inking my drawings, but that was just something that I personally enjoyed doing. And then we are finally moving on to the final assignment. So we had to go outside in Paris and draw loosely without any grids or lines or points, basically without any ruler, and just doing the environments that we saw. So I went in Paris and drew these, and then made a cleaner version, which was the assignment that I gave in. I also had some interior decors because they asked for 2 outdoors and 2 interior. They have some issues, but you know. For this, we had a image of reference, like a picture, and we had to completely redraw it with the right perspective and redraw all the elements, etc. So I did a first sketch with my red pencil because I thought that it helped me to see what I was doing a bit better. So then I just traced it with a graphite pencil to have a clean version without all my rough drawings. So my light box was extremely useful during my art school year. So that was one of the final assignments. We had 3 of them to do in like a clean version with rulers. Then we had this one, which was an outdoor picture of Paris, of like the balconies on like the higher floors. So I did the sketch a first time. I even taped other papers so that I could have my points of perspective at reach and just draw my lines with my big ruler. And I even had like a to-do list of the stuff that I had to work on again or review or clean up and correct, because there was a lot of things to do in this drawing. And it led to this bad boy. So I did once again the same thing. I cleaned everything up, and honestly, I'm really proud with it. I hope that you can see things correctly with the camera. If not, I'll just add pictures. This one was a church or a castle, I don't really remember. And so I did once again my sketch with a to-do list of the small details I had to work on. And I don't know if you can actually probably see on the video, but I had this other paper that I taped behind my sketch, which was actually a perspective grid, because this was a 3-point perspective, and the point that was very high up was way too far and annoying to draw my line from. So I just did this grid to help myself out. So I sketched out everything, and once I was done, I moved to the final piece. So I just once again traced the lines that I did previously, and honestly that's the one that I did last, and I was just tired with it, and I kind of just bullshitted my way through it and didn't add much thought and work into it. So that's a bit of a shame. But anyways, this was for all the work that I did for my perspective subject. So then we started working on anatomy, which I absolutely loved doing. So we actually started off by doing a couple of exercises with the class, which was figure drawing, as well as understanding the muscles and the structure of the body. So for example, we did these torso studies with the muscles and the points where there's the bones and the muscles connecting, etc. And we basically did that for every body part. Once again, I have a sketchbook tour that is going to be linked in this video. So here we did the anatomy of the legs with the calf and the thighs and the butt cheeks. So you have an idea of what we were working on. And alongside that, we did a lot of figure drawing. So figure drawings were very quick exercises, but when I mean very quick, I really do mean very quick, where we just had a couple of seconds, I think 10 seconds, to get the lines to have an idea of the gesture. So we actually had a live model pose with us, or sometimes we did it with online videos that we found. And this was just to really get a sense of the body and all of that stuff. Then we moved on to having longer poses, so we could actually add more details. And we eventually did the same for animals as well. So that was like super fun and something that, for instance, I never did before. So for the assignments, we had to do some figure drawings. So I always went in with a first pass, which was very rough and just to get an idea of things, to then clean them up with a thicker pencil. So these were done out of the reference of pictures that the school sent us, and we had to mainly place the general idea of the masses of the body to have a proper shape. They also asked us to add these lines alongside the legs and the arms mainly, to show that the body is indeed in 3D and that there's volume. And with those little circles, you had to show the movement and like whether it was forward or backwards. Then we had this exercise to design a zombie. First, I did these sketches because the idea was to make a zombie, so this very stiff pose that was very unnatural, and to have this really like sickly look of like skin on bones. So I did these and then moved on to this one, and they also wanted us to have a bit of skin that was torn so that we could actually see the muscles. So this was my first draft on the final sized paper to get an idea of where things were placed. And you can see that I did add like the landmarks to have an idea of where the muscles would be. So here we have like the deltoid with the shoulder and the muscles for the thighs to show that there's not just like one big circle, but there's smaller little muscles that are there a bit everywhere. And then I traced onto a final paper my design. So I showed a bit of this muscle, of the others, a bit of the rib cage, etc. And this was my zombie design. Then we went back to figure drawing, but this time we studied some more anatomy and the muscles and how everything worked. So here was our reference picture for one of them. I don't know why I don't have the other reference. And we had to make this very loose sketch for the first with just really like the gesture and the movement of the body. It didn't have to be correct, it just needed to show the sense of movement and fluidity. And then we had to do this second version, which was really more focused on the muscles and to make it anatomically correct. So I did have this old exercise under with my light box so that I could really still have a fluidity in the movement of my drawing, but it was still very complicated. So this was my first pass. And then I tried doing a second one but hated it, so I just moved on. Then did a third attempt, but it still wasn't doing the right thing for me, and the anatomy wasn't correct, and it was just looking very stiff. To then finally have this final piece with everything correct and showing the muscles of certain places to really have the landmarks and the idea of the movement. I really like this one though. So then we moved on to this other character with this lady as well. So once again, I did the first one with just the idea of the fluidity of the movement. I really enjoyed doing these fluid drawings because they really look natural and they're much more interesting, I believe. And then we did directly the one with the muscles to show how it should be drawn. And we just had to redraw the model and show the places where there was the shadow to really focus on just two values, white and gray, and that was it. Then we did it with another model and it gave me this. And I just want to show this as my last like figure drawing, life drawing, sketches that I did, which I thought were nicely done. So then I wanted to add an extra bit, which was portraits, because portraits are part of our anatomy and it's something that we studied that I really had fun doing. So we started off by doing a little self-portrait. And then we had to move on and draw other people that we had references online. After doing that, we actually did a little bit of caricature. So we had this reference and we had to try and really make some features more accentuated, and it was a fun exercise. So these were some of them. I actually did these sketches digitally because it was when there was COVID and we were working from home, and weirdly I found that it was easier to do caricatures with my computer. So then we had to make a cleaner version. So that was what I did of these two characters. I really like this one. She looks like a Disney character for some reason. And then we had to do a more manga chibi style of, once again, this exaggerated emotion or feature. So I made one that was crying a laughter and one that was just being desperate. And that's something I really enjoyed doing because usually art schools aren't a big fan of making you draw with like the manga style, but it was a fun exercise. So then we had some references and we had to draw a realistic portrait. So this was for these two characters. I do believe that I traced this old sketch I did of them, but I couldn't find the sketch anymore. So yeah, that's why it's missing a lot of like instruction lines. And then we had to make some realistic self-portraits. So I printed out in black and white because we were doing values, and having this already with like the values and the grays really helped a lot. So we needed a portrait that was a bit sideways and one that was completely from straight in front. And I came up with these, which I am super proud of. So it really took some time to do, and I did also have a sketch, but I think I did digitally and that I screened with my light table, and that's how I did these self-portraits. And these were the final assignments for anatomy. So now that we're done talking about the stuff that I actually enjoyed doing and thought was helpful, I thought I should move on to this other part of the video, which is what was objectively useful, but I didn't have the time of my life doing. So I want to start this off by talking about values, where we did a bunch of value studies, and when we started working on materials. So as you saw, my last portrait was the start of studying the values because we did it in black and white with some gray shadows. But we did push the thing a lot further later on. So for instance, this was an exercise where we had to redraw this character that was already in gray, and it was to see how can we shade things correctly without really having some really streaky lines to make the grays and making everything look smooth. So then we also did those small portraits of this character where we really had to focus on making a dark value study and a lighter value study. And we did the same for this dude behind. We also tried doing the values for different elements of the face. So we have this eye that I'm super proud of, the ear, the nose and the mouth, and more simple portraits, as well as a full body one, which I did actually for my semestrial project. So I find that this is a good drawing to show what I mean by we also studied materials, where what I mean by that is that we learned how to do the values for like skin on the body, as well as, for example, here the pants. So it's like some fabric and it doesn't reflect light the same way. So this is what I did for the drawing of Gavin, my boyfriend. We started off by doing small elements, like for example these vegetables, and still trying to have a realistic approach to this and not having it too stylized. So once we knew how to do this, we were supposed to do a still life with values. So I had my reference pictures over here that I did a digital sketch to have it in the big proportions of the size of my paper, and having just the elements and where they should be placed and how. And just so that you know, it was during this assignment that I really realized that I want to stop this art school, so I didn't really try putting much effort into it, and I'm aware that it's far from being my best work. But yeah, we had to do the values for this still life. We did a dark one and then a lighter one, I believe. I really struggled by doing the background of the table, and you can see my fingerprints a bit everywhere. This was not a fun exercise, and I really struggled and didn't understand what I was doing. Mind you, at that time we were doing school online, so we didn't have as much guidance as we could have had if we actually went in class. So then we had to do, once again, basically the same thing, but with a character. So for these, the exercise was to have the light source at different places. So here the light is coming from here, and then for this one, the light was coming from here. So yeah, these were another exercise for values. And then these were works for the semestrial project, which is why I made them much smaller, because I was tired of working on A3 papers all the time. Where we had to design, these were like a prey and a predator, and to also work with values to do the final illustration. So I started off by doing different studies of different preys and predators. And once I had that ready, I did a digital sketch and then moved on directly to making my prey and predator. And then we had a character design to do. So I did a first research. I wanted to do a Native American, I think a Cherokee. And then I did some more extensive research on the design I wanted to then be able to come up with the final design. So it got all disgusting because I think food went on my paper. But I did this first front view one, and I had to do a turnaround of the character, so I did it digitally because it's so much easier to do, where I had these guidelines a bit everywhere, and I also had a portrait of it, and this was the cleaner version that I handed in. I had one that was really more focused with the values, and the others were just simple shades to have an idea of like the robe had different colors. So this was all we did for values. Would I recommend it? Yes, because it is an important class to follow and to learn about. But honestly, it was hell to learn because it's really tedious and there's a lot of ways you could do it stylized, but my school didn't want us to stylize things and always wanted us to have a semi-realistic approach to it, so it just felt really restricting. But it's still part of the fundamentals and it's really useful to learn when you want to learn how to draw. So yeah, and then we actually learned how to do values first and then color with oil paints. So we had to buy this block of paper, and we started off by doing some values with it, with just a simple shape, which is a cone here, and then I did an apple. And once again, we were doing this from home, so it was really hard to comprehend how oil paints work, because I'm used to watercolors or sometimes acrylic. So I wanted to have a bit more fun and draw a teddy bear that I have. If you don't enjoy a material or a technique you're doing, at least you could make it easier for yourself by drawing something that you find fun to do, with once again trying to focus on the values. And then we are directly moving on to the final assignment for the values. And honestly, I'm so proud with this. My school didn't have the same opinion, but I really thought that it looked super good. But now looking back, I see a couple of issues I had, which was that the paint looked super grainy, because once again, we were never really taught how the oil paints work. But it was a very good exercise and we really learned a lot. And I kind of do want to learn how to do some more oil paints now. And once again, we had a reference image and we just had to repaint it again. But yeah, it was fun. And then this was actually the very last assignment I handed back in, and I really didn't work as much as I would have wanted it on it, because we started learning about color. And since I knew that I wasn't going to finish the school, I didn't attend the classes. So I was feeling extremely lost, and I still decided that I should do the final assignment so that I could, get closure of it or whatever. So we had a reference image and my colors are so off and had nothing to do with the original, but I still tried. So this was all that we did with oil paints. Since I didn't attend much, I only focused on the final assignments. But I still have the materials, so I might do some more testing with oil paints later on. And for the last part of this video, I wanted to talk about what I personally really disliked doing and that I truly think didn't help me in learning how to draw and stuff. Starting off, there's doing still lives. This was a way to teach us composition, but they didn't do it properly, and we didn't really have classes to tell us the do's and don'ts or some tips. We would just be told, draw what you see at your house, and it's just like, well, it's not necessarily very pleasing to the eye or anything, so it was just confusing. Anyways, so this was the things that we had to draw from our house. I first did some small sketches to have them cleaned up, because this was some homework that was graded. We still had to focus on perspective, but like very loosely and not using your ruler to do everything. So some things are really wrong, like the circle over here is not in the right perspective at all. Then we had to do some more, so I was just tired with everything at this point, so I did my clothes that were hanging where there was like an underwear and a sock, because might as well. So yeah, this was the sketch, and then the final design that were traced. I tried to make interesting compositions, but it wasn't easy. So then we really tried to do composition with objects that we could find. So these were the rough sketches and the cleaned version. And honestly, I'm really proud with these four, because they look pretty clean to me and correct, especially that shoe. I'm really proud of that. So then we had to do some other ones that we would really draw in an A3 size. So I did a first small sketch on A4 that I had to redraw on A3. And I actually still have the sketch under it that is taped, and I just traced it. Then there's this breakfast scene that I did that honestly I kind of like, with like my apple juice, my toast, my Nutella, my cereals, etc. Another one with another teddy bear and a piggy bank and bracelets, etc. And this was the final piece So I did a first sketch of it, which was, I did a bathroom theme because I thought might as well make themes because I was not having fun. So I chose like specific rooms or like some items that made sense to go together. So here we had like a hairdryer, toothbrush, nail polish, deodorant and soap, etc., which I did a cleaner version of later on. So we did do a couple of loose sketches for these to have some ideas of what designs to pick and not pick, because we really did a lot of still lives and we only did on A3 papers the best ones that we had. So like this was just like a fork on my bottle, which I thought was like not interesting enough. Here was the very first sketch of one that I did on an A3 size. And then some really small thumbnails because thumbnails are important to learn. Studying still lives was complicated. I didn't have the fun of my life, but it was still manageable because I left the worst for the end. The worst being all of this. So I've had this guy hanging around with me for this entire video, but there's a lot more. We did some sculpture, well, modeling, with this monster clay. Mind you, I don't really care about studying about 3D. So they're kind of all stuck together and it's complicated to get it out of the box because it reacts to heat to melt. So they're not as perfect as when I did them. So now that I have all my work out of the box, let me show you what we did in the order. So we started off by just having fun with the clay and trying to understand how it works. So I just did this little witch thing and I was like, oh, you know, this could be fun. I did a little duck face and this little pig. But then we started actually working on things. So we had to do a skull. And once again, we were doing sculpture from our homes. So we only had the teacher's webcam to understand how it was working, and it was so unclear. And honestly, the hardest thing I ever had to do in my life because I just could not comprehend things. So we did a first skull. I was told that it was really bad, and so we had to do a second one, which was also very bad apparently. Sorry, I had to take a little break because the SD card of my camera was full. So anyways, I was talking about this dude. So we had to sculpt a full body model with the knowledge of the anatomy classes that we took. And this was just like a leg I did a first time and struggled and realized it wasn't the right proportions and structure. We used wire to do the base structure and added some clay on top of it. And once again, since we were doing this from home, we really struggled with doing it correctly because our teacher just had a simple webcam and you can't see 3D with the webcam. This was honestly not as bad and I actually had fun doing this guy. And later on we started doing the different parts of the body that are more precise, such as the eyes, the ears, and the nose. On the bottom were the first drafts that we did, a first time to try and understand how it works and all. So both of the mouths are really bad. I don't know how to do mouths. I really do enjoy these 3 ones, even for the drafts, and I love even more the final version. This was timed as well, so there was this extra pressure of doing it correctly. And at the end we even just made this nice clean cut for the edges so that it really had a nice finish to it. So we really had to focus on getting it correctly, not just from a top shot, but also from all the angles. Because studying volumes is important, and it really did make me understand, especially for the eye, how it actually works. Doing the different parts of the body was the, I'd say, least complicated. But doing a full body was just pure hell for me. And this is actually the only assignment I had like a good grade on the entire year. Even though I'm putting it in what I really disliked and that I didn't find useful. And the very last assignment, this was the before last assignment I did before quitting the school, was this character that we had some drawings of, so the concept art basically. and we had to make a 3D model out of it. On top of that, I think I was sick for some of the days, so I couldn't work as much on it as I would have liked to. And it just looks really not great. The fact that it's been just drying and squashed doesn't help, I believe. But yeah, we had to make some armor, and it was this like fat guy, and it was just super complicated to do. And once again, having to do this at home without any guidance was practically impossible. Also, whoops, I'm realizing I just had ketchup when my camera was full. Because I was eating fries. I ruined the hard work I put into having a nice frame. I'm sorry. And yeah, that basically concludes my hard work at my art school. Okay, and well, that was basically all the assignments and homework, as well as exercises I did when I was at my art school. So yeah, I didn't enjoy everything I did. Far from that, there's a reason why I quit. I did make an entire video explaining why I quit art school if you're interested in it, but I really do think that I learned so much by going to art school, even for just this short amount of time. And I don't want to discourage everybody from going to art school, because I really do think also that just me personally, I'm not really made for going to this school system. Because if I do that, my mental health doesn't follow me, so that's a bit of a shame, but that's just how it is. I hope this video, which was very long, I'm super sorry, but that this video helped. So I really don't want to discourage you if you want to go to art school, because it can be a good experience for some people. I'll have linked down in the description all of the videos where I have the sketchbook tours of the sketchbook that I did during my art school, as well as the video to why I quit art school and stuff like that. So do check that out. Anyways, it took me so long to film this. It's dark outside now, so the lighting probably changed a lot. But if you enjoyed this video, you can like this video if you like it. You can also comment down below whatever you like and tell me what your experience was with art school, or if you plan on going to art school, because I am interested. You can also share this video if you think that it can help some people, because that's how you can help me, a small creator on YouTube. I also have my Instagram that's linked in the description, because that's where I post regularly and where anyways I post all of my work. So there's also posts back from when I was in art school with nice pictures of all of my artwork from that time. And you can also subscribe to this channel, because it really helps me a lot. And I like seeing that you support my hard work, because I'm really doing this by passion and I love filming these videos. I feel like my conclusion is a bit all over the place. If you don't want to go to art school, there's a lot of alternatives. I can make you a video about how to be self-taught if you want that, but you can also go if you feel like that would help you. Okay, that's all that I have to say. See you next time. Tschüss!